Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call Digital Edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
Assalamu alaikum. We are back with another edition of Behind the Final Call cover story. Once again, of course, we missed last week, but we are back by Allah's grace and permission right back here for another edition of a powerful and very important edition of the Behind the Final Call cover story. Of course, this Ramadan, got to say Ramadan Mubarak to all those who are fasting, participating in the fast, and thank you for joining us. Take the opportunity to like, share, and basically make sure that everybody that you know that needs to hear this message, that they're on and logged in. So please go ahead and do that. This episode, in addition of the paper, is volume number 41, number 29. Date on the paper is April 26th. The title on the paper is Executed. Activist family outraged by fatal shooting in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Patrick murdered by police officer. They charge anger, agony, rise with the death of another black man, and another family suffers painful loss. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Naba. Once again, why this cover story?
Well, walaikum salam, Brother Troy. You know, this covered story, I think, this killing of Patrick Lyoya in Grand Rapids, Michigan, it was so egregious. It was such an egregious, unnecessary killing, and so many people really saw it as an execution. Basically, Patrick is a Congolese immigrant, came to this country a few years ago with his family, mother, father, siblings, fleeing war and conflict in the Republic of Congo. They come here, they settle. They're living in Michigan. There's a traffic stop, and a white police officer stops Patrick, allegedly because there's something about a license plate, which is still, there are questions about, okay, why was he still stopped in the first place? Patrick apparently gets out of the car. He's talking to the officer. There's some miscommunication. At a certain point, I think the officer tries to grab him. Patrick kind of breaks away, starts to run. And his whole encounter with the police officer, you see this man trying to get away from a police officer. Eventually, there's a struggle on the ground. Police officials say there was a struggle over a taser, which in some ways doesn't make sense, because if you're in such close quarters, you don't even use a taser, right? The whole point of a taser is to be at a distance. Anyway, from this traffic stop, this officer, still unnamed, pulls a service revolver and shoots Patrick in the back of the head and kills him. So they've been protesting Grand Rapids, Michigan. Attorney Ben Crump is now involved with the case. In terms of what we've been told by the family, this Friday there will be a funeral. And it's expected that Reverend Al Sharpton will be speaking there. But this, again, another it's beyond tragic. It's beyond tragic. And the fundamental question that keeps coming up, I think, for a lot of people is why? How does a simple, quote-unquote, routine traffic stop result in the death of a young black man? There's some questions about whether there was language and communication barriers, But how do you go from I need to talk to you about a license plate to shooting someone in the back of the head? And why don't we see these patterns across racial lines? So if you read in our story, which Brother William Muhammad did a great job of reporting for us in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's one of our writers, did a very good job. If you read the story, you can go to finalcall.com or get the digital edition. It talks about the numbers of people killed during traffic stops and how blacks and black men are disproportionately in that number. This tragedy, of course, since Patrick is Congolese, his mother and father Congolese, they don't speak English as a first language. So you've had blacks in Grand Rapids, in particular, you've had one of the local political leaders really come out and try to assist the family, and you've seen a great deal of support for the family. Benjamin Crump is the family attorney, and Kent County Commissioner Robert S. Womack has really taken the lead in trying to make sure that this family gets justice, making sure that language barriers, administrative barriers, racism, no kind of barrier stops them from getting justice and from communicating. So this has also shown our African immigrant family a different aspect of life in America, tragic loss of life. And one of the things that Patrick's father said was he was so hurt that his son would lose his life for a small mistake. And Patrick's mother said when she came to America, she thought she came to a safe land. And now she's lost her son. So read the story. We got good comments, good on-the-ground reporting in terms of what's happening in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Also, probably one of the most important things of the story, one of the political leaders black political leaders talked about how now that everybody's talking about the tragedy, he said the state of Michigan legislature has done nothing in terms of police reform. So that says a lot by itself.
Yes, sir. Praise due to Allah. Praise due to Allah. Allah is indeed the best knower. And these things keep on happening. And one of the things as I look through the paper, is the cry for justice. It's the cry for justice. I'm going to go to, we'll come back to page 2, but I want to jump quickly to page 5. Released from hell, 161 people exonerated after an average of 11.5 years behind bars.
Yeah, and what that means, Brother Troy, because we want to be clear, this is a report that was based on people who were, quote unquote, exonerated in 2021. 161 people who served an average of almost 12 years in jail, and they were innocent. I really want us to let that think in, let that sink in. So what that means was these innocent people who had not done anything to deserve being locked up, they lost a tremendous amount of time out of their lives. We're talking about 1,849 years of people's lives lost. Not let go on a technicality, not let go on some legal trick, but let go because it has absolutely been proven that they were innocent. If this is not a travesty and an indictment of America, I don't know what is. And of course, One of those people was Muhammad Aziz, right? Who was wrongly, falsely jailed for over 30 years for the killing of Brother Malcolm in New York. So this is the state of American injustice. And it's interesting to me, you got all kinds of stories all over everywhere, but you ain't saying this one all over everywhere. And this is why we have to tell these stories for ourselves. And we have to stay connected. So go to finalcall.com and subscribe and support media that supports you. But the fact that you had people lose 1,849 years of their lives for nothing, and a lot of this was tied to misconduct, law enforcement, prosecutors, others lying and setting people up. So you really want to read that story. It's a great story by Sister Anissa Muhammad, one of our young up-and-coming writers.
Yes, sir. Praise to Allah. Thank you. Now I'm going to jump back a little bit because and I'm going to jump to page 2 of the article of the Final Call newspaper, and that article is "Woe to Unjust Judges." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You know, this brings us back to the war in Europe and the Russian-Ukrainian war, and we have been hearing for several weeks these allegations, accusations. We've been seeing images of attacks on civilians, we're told, launched by the invading Russian army that is waging war on Ukraine. And we've seen Russia's President Vladimir Putin be called a war criminal. There are even some that are saying that the Russians are guilty of genocide. And there have been different calls for things to be done and for justice to be rendered. And so this call for justice for the civilians in Ukraine, for any atrocities that they may have suffered, it's not necessarily a bad call. But the question becomes, and what we wanted to show in our reporting and analysis, was that all of these people that are calling for some kind of justice and some kind of accountability for the loss of civilian lives, all of their hands are bloody. So if Russia's hands are bloody, guess what? America has a history of bloody-handed policy. France has a history of bloody-handed policy. Great Britain, the United Kingdom, has a history of bloody-handed policy. The other thing is Russia, America, these nations, while you hear them talking about justice, they all insulate themselves from being held accountable by international courts. So essentially, Americans cannot be brought before the International Criminal Court. Russians will not be brought before the International Criminal Court at The Hague, because neither of those countries signed a treaty that would mean they would be governed by those jurisdictions, right? So this is the hypocrisy, and this is the history that we see over and over and over again. So the other thing is, while there's all this talk of human rights and all this talk of we need to enforce human rights, there's not a uniform application of the value of life. And so we wanted to show that, and we wanted to show the U.S., how the U.S. and how these other countries exempt themselves. With Russia and America being on the UN Security Council, basically they can block any human rights investigation from the Security Council simply with a veto. So this is what we wanted people to really look into. We also go into a couple decades ago or some years ago, People may forget, but Tony Blair and George W. Bush, there were people internationally calling for them to be tried as war criminals based on what happened in Iraq and the level of devastation, loss of life, human suffering that happened as a result of that. So we really hope that you'll take the time to go to finalcall.com and really take the time to read this story, which will give you a different perspective and a little more analysis, so that when we're looking at these different things happen around the world, we are not blinded by Satan, but we have a wider view about what's going on, so we can better assess what is happening, what is justice, and what is not happening, and why it's not happening. But certainly there's a level, we don't want to see anyone suffer, but certainly there's a level of outrage at the deaths of Europeans and Caucasian people. But you don't see that same level of outrage for the war in Syria. You don't see that same type of outrage for the loss of life for the war in Yemen, which is the U.S. backing Saudi Arabia and other countries in that war, which has been called one of the most devastating wars that's happening today. But you don't hear about it. So we wanted to bring these things together and give you, our readers, insight.
Yes, sir.
Insight. So we hope that you'll go to finalcall.com and check out that. That's written by Brother Brian Muhammad, who is following these developments in Ukraine and in Europe pretty much every week.
Yeah. Great, Inshallah. Thank you. I'm jumping to actually page 13, and I know y'all like he's all over the place today, but it really stood out to me, this cry for justice, and how, unfortunately, it's not, of course, the darker people on the planet are those who suffer the greatest from this injustice, but no one is exempt from it. And so we have the article, Justice Critical to Fighting Sexual Violence in Conflict. Can you give us a little bit about what that is and how that is playing out in the United Nations as well?
Yeah, this was we had one women's rights and human rights activists talking about how women continue to be victimized during conflicts, not just in Ukraine, but all over the world in different war zones and different situations. So the Secretary General's special representative, who's working to end rape as a weapon of war, was part of a debate that talked about strengthening the accountability in these cases, so that there can be an attempt to try to stop, curb, curtail in some way the use of rape as a weapon of war. And so Pramila Patten, who is the Secretary General's special representative working to end rape as a weapon of war, was the person who was speaking. And she said that that these problems are rising in places including Ukraine, Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Tigray in northern Ethiopia. So she released a report that's covered 18 country situations, and it documented 3,293 UN verified cases committed just last year, 800 more than in 2020, which of course represents a significant increase. Most of those targeted, 97%, were women and girls, while another 83 cases involved men and boys who were raped in detention centers. In 12 cases, lesbian, gay, trans, queer, or intersex persons were also targeted. So again, this is a call to action in terms of doing things to hold people accountable for these types of atrocities. So again, you can go to finalcall.com and you can read more about that story. And as you said, Brother Troy, another important cry for justice.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, that it's a really sombering note, and I don't mean to present all of this, bad news in a sense, but the reality is that, the hope is not gone. And all the work that we're doing under the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is based on the reality that this world has to come to an end. As I've said it, and I don't think I can say it too much, that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that separation is the best and only solution. So, we'll
and
talk
the
a
other
little bit
thing,
about that.
the other thing that we are told that we should always keep in mind is that we should watch what is happening far off, because eventually those things will be happening here.
Yes, sir.
As America falls and crumbles. So we need to have an understanding of the time and the interrelationship between these events. Why? So that we can make the proper decision with our
Absolutely.
lives. And we can make the right decision to follow the divine guidance contained in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and in the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan today. Because certainly if we're looking at a dark time, which we are, Allah would not put us in a dark time without leaving a light in that time as well.
That's right.
So we got an article from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad this week, which lays out all of these different things that we're seeing in society today, the violence, the lack of morality, the really degraded state of human beings, and how this thing continues, and these desolate times are growing. And then we have an article from the minister about how God himself has come to answer our cry for justice. And so it's one thing to cry for justice. It's another thing to know that you're going to get it.
That's right.
And we are assured of having justice because the God on scene has come to deliver justice. And we should never forget that. And if we don't forget that, and if we understand the time, and if we line up with that God and the divine men that he has given to us, then this is a time of great salvation and a message that we must take to our people so that they can be saved. So it's not all bad news. It's a bearing of witness to the time and the need for action. And if we act in accord with the time, by Allah's grace, we can work to save our own lives, and we can save the lives of others. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has reminded us, bore witness to us, and shown us that Allah has the power to save. We just have to line up with him and get an understanding of the time and what must be done, so we are not blinded by the touch of Satan. So subscribe and read these articles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise due to Allah. I'm going to jump on and switch that. And as you said, that part of once you know, there's a responsibility that's placed on you. And you can't be one who just knows the truth and you be a hider of that. So every week, by Allah's grace and permission, we have and demonstrate and show not only what the brothers are doing in the Nation of Islam as we reach out to our community, bringing them good news, bringing them life, power, and energy. But we also have our sisters doing the same. But this week, we have an article, of course, and you see a few pictures of the brothers going out in the community from around the country, sharing light and truth. And I know you touched on it, Brother Naba, but can you just touch on why this section is in the paper regularly and why you're showing people, or wwhy we show people from all across the country going out?
Fundamentally, and when you look at the final call, you see that we are an institution devoted to the resurrection of the black man and woman, not from a physical grave, but from a grave of ignorance, from a grave of inactivity, from a grave of immorality, from a grave of being able to do anything significant for ourselves in way of self-independence. So that means in order to reverse that, what do you need? Well, if you're talking mental resurrection, you need a different teaching. You need a different understanding. We would say you need supreme wisdom. And that supreme wisdom doesn't just float down out of the sky, but it starts because the God chooses a man and gives that man a message. That man spreads the message. The message attacks those. The message attracts those who become followers, believers, disciples, and now you have a movement growing around this divine message. So today, how do you spread that message? Well, you can do it social media, you can do it over the airways, you can do it all, which is great. But the fundamental best way to touch people is people to people.
That's right.
And so every week, every day, somewhere in this country, the brothers of the fruit of Islam, the men who belong to Islam in North America and who undergo the military training in the Nation of Islam are going out as little saviors. And they're taking a divine word contained in a newspaper. But it's more than a newspaper. It is a resurrection tool. It is a resurrection tool. It is a conversation starter. It is a bearer of witness. It is something that you can take with you and in the quiet of your own space, or even amid chaos, you can sit and look and read and ponder and consider and study and get a divine word that you can now judge for yourself. So our brothers being out, touching people, is the fundamental work of the Nation of Islam. Also being that example, looking like, displaying the qualities of a Muslim, touching people, showing compassion. This is what the brothers do. It's an incredible work. It's a work that has not stopped during the pandemic. The brothers have been extraordinarily dutiful. And so every week we try, or if not every week, almost every week, we have the honor of showcasing some of the soldiers of Muhammad who are engaged in this great work of resurrection.
Praise due to Allah. All praise is due to Allah. So on another good note, I want to jump to page number 12. Beautiful article. I haven't honestly had an opportunity to get into that one completely, but the title is Muslim Community Activists Sworn in to Serve on Bridgeport City Council. Can you give us a little bit about that?
Essentially, one of our brothers will be who has served in Bridgeport and who's been a great advocate in particular for those of our people who have been behind bars. He has been chosen to complete or to fill a vacancy on the district council in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And what he's done since 1989, he's really been a champion dealing with those who were formerly incarcerated. And now he's being called on to serve at a higher level. So this is again an example of the great work of the Nation of Islam. This is again an example of the reformative, restorative power contained in the teachings. And so now Brother Frederick Hodges, who's a well-known and respected community activist, is coming to a higher level of service. Inshallah, he will have the opportunity to seek a full term, but he will be serving as a member in addition to serving on the city council. Some of the committees he will be working on will be education, contracts, redistricting, and social services. But Brother Fred, as he is affectionately known, really is somebody that has a lot of respect, a lot of love. And he is an example of a redeemed person. And with that kind of example, we pray a lot that he will be successful and help to redeem others. But we salute Brother Fred for his fine work. And we're good to share good news, and a wise choice, a good choice in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
All praise are due to Allah for that. I'm gonna. I hope I don't get in trouble for this one. That's usually not a good sign, is it? but a beautiful article. Actually, two Can you touch on a universal message, the historic effort to translate the Swan Song?
Oh,
Body
well,
in that.
that was no. I mean, this was a very important article for us, not just because Brother Troy is in it, but during the Swan Song, we really had an expansion of the minister's message. This was, of course, the Minister's Savior's Day 2022 address delivered in February at Mars Mariam, or from Mars Mariam, was spoken to the world. And Haitian Creole, I believe French, Spanish, several other languages. The message was translated in real time. Now imagine that. Imagine this message being webcast, broadcast, electronically distributed from America. And we had a rough day that day too, because they kept trying to cut us off. But anyway, we wanted to show, our beautiful brothers and sisters working kind of behind the scenes, Brother Troy and others, to truly deliver that universal message to the world. And so it was really a great day. And we hope that you will read it and see the continued growth and development and expansion of the nation of Islam. So don't ever let anybody tell you or try to limit who we are and what we do. But take a good look at reading this. We think you'll enjoy it. And we're proud of everyone who was part of it. And we thank them for their service.
Praise the Lord. I got to send a special shout out and thank you to all those who participated. We have a team of individuals that have been helping during the time of COVID on many of the different programs that we've had, that the Nation of Islam has had during the pandemic, using Zoom, and the support that they have helped to actually facilitate these successful events by Allah's permission. And of course, in many instances, you don't see those individuals behind the scene. So I have to send a special thank you to all of those who have continued and do continue to help with those types of events. All praises to Allah. Thank you. And we had some additional individuals, as you mentioned, from across, as they say in the UK, across the pond, and just really literally across the world, that helped to make that success. So I have to throw in my extra special thank you for those.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. We had people in Paris. We had people translating Spanish and Arabic. As we said, we had Brother Makandal, Haitian Creole. We even had
Bosnian.
Yeah, Bosnian, Malagasy, the national language of Madagascar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so this is really, it's beautiful, and just showing our continued growth.
Yes, sir.
Our continued growth, and how what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has given us is really a universal message. We just start at home, and then we spread abroad. Because the whole world is in need of resurrection.
Now, brother, we've covered a lot. We're not going to get through it all, but I want to make sure that we touch on this article. The other article on the other side of the paper will go to your editorial this week, and then I'll pass it to you for anything else that we have to scroll through. But can you touch on Elevated Places highlights lawsuit aimed at the giant Google?
Yeah, well, this was a show on the Elevated Places network, and it featured attorney Ben Crump, and it really talked about a class action lawsuit that's being filed against Google that deals with or alleges discrimination against minorities, and especially Black people and women of color. So this is, again, just, we see over and over again that we find ourselves in these fights, We find ourselves in these fights. We find ourselves steadily struggling to be able to, in some way, succeed, in some way, to be able to have a measure of success. And we just want to continue to show you the depth of these continued struggles, so that you will see that we have a fight on every level.
That's right.
And there's not been any retreat from our enemy on any level. So if there's been no retreat from our enemy on any level, what do we look like? Not unifying and not deciding that we are going to come together in our own best interest. So go to finalcall.com and check that out and see if maybe you might think it's a good idea that Black folk unite and do something for themselves.
Praise you to Allah. Thank you, Brother Naba. I know we have covered a lot this week in a short period of time. And guess what? We're not going to get through all of it, but you can just see that because we haven't touched the article absolutely does not mean that it's not important, does not mean that it's not interesting, does not mean that you don't want to check it out. So once again, go ahead right now. We're going to give you, or we're going to pause for the calls real quick. Go ahead. If you're not on your phone watching this program, go ahead and pull out your phone, go to finalcalldigital.com and subscribe to the Final Call newspaper. Go ahead and don't put it off for later. If you can do it now, go ahead and let's just do that right now. Brother Naba, the state of Black America 2022 and signs of the time. And if you could, as well as why don't we end on that? Let's jump to Brother Demetrius and we'll end on yours. Revelation of hidden truths and the resurrection of the dead, overlapping of Easter, Passover, and Ramadan 2022.
And that's really a great article, Brother Student, Mr. Dimitri, who talks about these important principles and these important holy days, if you will, in terms of the principles that they represent. And Brother Dimitri talks about how the real principles of these different days overlap. And he talks about how the minister has spoken into that deeper understanding of the commonality of Christianity, Islam, and the teachings of Moses. And how, as we dig deeper, we start to look into the resurrection of the dead, the same place we started with. Not the physical dead, mentally, morally, economically, spiritually dead. Because you can be resurrected, you can be raised in that way. So, but a beautiful article by Brother Dimitri, you want to really check that out. And my editorial to kind of wrap it up, the State of Black America 2022. Essentially, this is, of course, the major report that the National Urban League does every year. And we always kind of look forward to the report, its analysis, facts, figures, etc. One of the things that struck me is that in 2022, since the ratification of America's Constitution in 1788, the Urban League's Equality Index for 2022 finds that blacks in 2022, right? Even though the Constitution was ratified in 1788 and classified us as 3/5 of a human being in 1788, in 2022, we are about 3/5 along the way to be equal to white people in this country. Imagine that. And so we earn less, and the figures are there in the article. We have less wealth. We live shorter lives. Black women more likely to die in childbirth. But one of the other things that I found interesting was not just the statistical gaps, not just the gaps in opportunity, but the mental, emotional, and psychological price that Black people pay in this country. And so the State of Black America this year included an opinion poll that really revealed the constant mental anguish and insecurity that we as Black folk endure. So according to this opinion poll, Blacks were more likely than whites to worry about being paid less, to worry about being passed over for promotions, to worrying about having to work harder to get the same amount as their white counterparts, being discriminated against. Blacks were more worried about basic survival, putting food on the table, getting enough working hours, concerned about whether they lose their job, concerned about whether they be able to pay their mortgage, and concerned about spending even whatever little savings that they had to make ends meet. So basically, what I argue in the editorial, since we're looking at these, not to mention now, and this is really, I think, significant, attacks on voting rights, Now, remember, in 2020, black folks were just applauded, right, for saving democracy. Remember that?
Mm.
Saving democracy, not just having Joe Biden win, but saving democracy. And now there's been a total reversal in terms of attacks on voting rights at the local level, at the state level, and a failure to act at the federal level. So my basic contention, if you will, is that these statistics, the anxiety and the woe, should lead us to decide to act differently than we have been acting. And so despite the warnings from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan against having a blind faith in this world politics, which our quote-unquote leaders continue to try to foster on us. We've been warned against believing in some benevolence of white people. We've been warned against moral appeals to white conscience in a country that has none. So essentially, my argument is our salvation lies in harnessing our economic, cultural, political, and spiritual unity to the plow of self-determination, self-independence, and self-sacrifice. And we get over $1 trillion in spending out of this economy. What could we do with that? But not only that, brothers and sisters, again, this is why it's important to look internationally. You've got countries, nations, people that are looking to get out of the grip of America. They're looking for different ways, different partnerships, different strategies to try to make progress. You don't think we could unite with some of these people and find some kind of economic common ground? Our brothers and sisters in Africa and the Caribbean are calling for us. So the editorial argues that with our spending power, with the brilliant black men and women we have across these different disciplines, with the world, much of the world, seeking an alternative to U.S. domination, doesn't it make sense that we couple internal unity with external partnerships to try to do something for ourselves? So read the editorial, see what you think. But we close by saying we have nothing to lose but our chains, and God himself is with us, because we know, we have been taught, we understand, we see in Scripture that this is the day of our rise. And nothing can stop us. We just have to get our own foot out of our own way. And if we do that, we can have more success, and we can get more, and we can come closer to improving our condition. But we cannot continue to believe in a fairy tale like transformation of evil people to good. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, the Easter Bunny doesn't exist, and the transformation of white folks en masse to do good, to do right, that don't exist either, brothers and sisters.
Praise
so we might as well unite and do something for ourselves. We have no choice.
So, Brother Nam, I'm just quickly clicking through. Of course, we didn't cover it all. We covered a lot today, but we still, once again, go ahead. If you have not taken the opportunity to subscribe to the Final Call newspaper, please do so. And if you are already subscribed to the Final Call newspaper, when you see the brothers and sisters in the community with the paper, when that brother or sister that works on the job with you, when they come to you and say, man, why don't you contribute to the Final Call newspaper? Because you got your subscription, don't let that stop you. Powerful paper, powerful paper, powerful paper, powerful edition of the Final Call newspaper. Make sure that you take the opportunity to know. You know, I love Brother Now, but sometimes people support when I'm out in the street, and they'll support and they'll make a donation to the paper, but some of them don't read the paper. So we appreciate the support, but please make sure that you pick it up. It may be that which saves your life. Want to go quickly to, before I move to a few quick announcements, anything else you want to share on the paper, Brother Naba?
Well, again, like, subscribe, share. They should like this program. They should sign up for the alerts for when this program comes on, and then spread it, brothers and sisters. Share it, and keep supporting that which supports you.
Praise you to Allah. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. For those who may not have heard, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan shared words a couple of days ago now. Was it days are just merging together? Was that yesterday or the day before yesterday?
That would have been Sunday, a couple of days ago.
Yes. Yep. It was on Sunday. So, and if you did not get a chance to see that, please or hear his words, please take the opportunity to do so. I just posted the link right there. So if you're on Facebook or on YouTube, you can check that out right there. There's a beautiful event that will be going on this evening, part of the Elevated Places Network, and it goes to that same spirit that really is reflective of this program today, is the cry for justice, right? Is that we've seen that we can't depend on those who have not given us justice, and we cannot depend on those who have been in total opposition of us having justice. If we can't depend on them, which there's no reason that we should believe that we can, then we have to get up and do something for ourselves. Separation is the best and only solution. So take the opportunity this evening, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, live event with Student Minister Ava, Sister Donna Muhammad, a writer of the paper, wrote the article in this week's edition of the paper dealing with Google, and a guest moderator, Brother Student Minister Aman Muhammad. You can type right there. You see the information. If somebody could go ahead and please type the Zoom information in the chat for us, we'd greatly appreciate it. You can see that right there, 895-444-90889, or you can check out the program live stream at the Project Separation YouTube channel. So please, please, please make sure that you support, and you're not supporting really the program, you're really supporting yourself by providing yourself more insight, more guidance, and more enlightenment on the things and decisions that you need to make or that we need to make in our community. Here is that flyer again of this is the recording. So that information I'm quite sure does not work now, but I'll post it once again in the chat. And maybe, inshallah, you'll be able to click on that so that you can hear the rebroadcast. Once again, if you have not had the opportunity to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's Swan Song address, of course, it's cited and referenced a few times, I believe, even in this edition of the paper. And that's because there's still light and guidance that's being, that you can still see more deeply in as time goes by. His words become more and more relevant and become, and it's really basically the fulfillment of what he said. And the same is true with the lecture, the criterion that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan delivered. And please make sure that you go and visit media.noi.org so that you can check out both of those and get guidance and enlightenment and inspiration that even though in this dark time that there's still hope. All praises are due to Allah. Brother Naba, closing words?
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, like, share, keep spreading the message, and keep coming back. And let us know what you think. Let us know what you like to see. And inshallah, we hope to see you next week.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Once again, another edition of Behind the Final Call cover story. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, and may Allah continue to bless us all. Assalamu alaikum.
Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call Digital Edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
We covered a lot, dude. We covered a whole lot.